of Esther. Is that cool? Cool? You guys ready? Good. All right. The other thing is I also had tonsillitis during the week, so I'm trying to take it a little easy. Um, hence the tea. Otherwise, that. So stay with me. Stay with me. That's going to be annoying. You can hear me sip the whole time. Maybe this wasn't a good idea, guys. Okay. Cool. So the beginning of the book of Esther starts by telling us about a king. So before we even get to a queen, we talk about a king. And his name is King Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus. He's also named King Xerxes. So we're going to go with King Xerxes, okay? And he ruled over 127 provinces. Yeah. From India to Ethiopia. That's huge, right? He had a massive region of provinces, 127 different provinces. And he was king over all of them, right? But he was based in the citadel, or the main city called Shushan. Everyone say Shushan? Good, everyone's with me. Doesn't matter that I'm sitting down. But this guy had so much money. If you can imagine being a king over one country, you've probably loaded. This guy's covering India to Ethiopia. That's a big range of land, right? And this guy's got, he's got cash. Well, probably not actual cash because there was no cash. But this guy was loaded. And he would have feasts and show off his riches, but at the same time still kind of want to share some of the money and some of the riches that he had and bless people, that kind of thing. And one time he had a feast, and he brought all the noblemen from all the 127 regions and brought them to Shushan, where he lived. And he had a feast for 180 days. That's a lot of food. It's a lot of drinks. It's a lot of catering. Though I'm sure he had a couple professional chefs. Like, this guy had everything he needed. He went to show off everything that he had, but also to bless all of these people. And after the 180 days had finished, he had a feast for 7 days, just to end it all off. But for the last 7 days, he had a feast for the people of his city in Shushan. So he brought all the men in, all the officers and officials and people, and he brought them into the garden courtyard in his palace. And he sits down and he has this feast with them for 7 days. And the king was married to a queen. Her name is Queen Vashti. Everyone say Queen Vashti. You're not going to need to remember her for very long because she's about to get taken out of this story very quickly. So we've got King Xerxes and Queen Vashti. It almost sounds like a Disney movie. Really, it does. It's almost like they stole the ideas from somewhere. I don't know. Maybe. But so Queen Vashti, at the same time, puts on a feast for all the women. And she brings them all into her palace or wherever she's at. And she brings them all in and they have a feast. She's probably one of the first feminists of all time. And it doesn't go well, to be honest. On the 7th day of the feast, King Xerxes, he says, he's had a few drinks, he's had some wine, and he's feeling good, and he's like, you know what? Bring Queen Vashti, bring her in. He says this in Esther 1:11. It says, to bring Queen Vashti before the king wearing her royal crown in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. She was a beautiful woman. So he sends some people and they go ask her, hey, can you come? The king wants you to, show off, essentially. She refuses. She says, no, I don't want to go. I've got my own feast. I've got my own stuff going on. No, I'm not going. Tell him I'm not coming. And the king gets furious. He gets angry. Like, not only did you say no to me, the king of 127 provinces, but at the same time, look how you've made me look in front of all of these people that I have here in my banquet. at this feast. So he kind of sits with his immediate advisors and his officials and the guys that are with him, and he's like, guys, listen, what are we going to do about this whole Vashti situation? Like, this is not cool. This is not okay. She disobeyed me in front of all of these people. I do not look good. And one of the officials says, yeah, she's disobeyed you and it's not okay. And you know what? It's setting a horrible example to every other woman in the land that thinks now she can disobey her husband and use Queen Vashti as an example. So they suggested to the king, okay, how about you make a royal decree that she will never come in to see you ever again? And it pleased the king. And he said, okay, sounds good, do it. And we never hear of Queen Vashti ever again. She's gone. A few days go by, and the king kind of keeps remembering the whole situation. Like, it keeps playing out in his mind, and it keeps getting him angry. Like, he keeps getting angry about it, and he's tense all the time. He's stressed, and his servants are like, hey, king, we can tell you're stressed out. How about we bring all the young virgin women to come and get pampered, and then you pick for yourself your new queen? He's like, okay, that sounds good. Very appealing offer to a king who can have literally anything he wants. So he's like, okay, sounds good, let's do this. So they bring all the young virgin girls together to get ready to be pampered before the king. But before we go any further, I just want to remind you that during this time, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, since Nebuchadnezzar, there was a bunch of Jews that were scattered everywhere. They're all over the place. And they're all in exile. They're not in their homeland. They're kind of just everywhere. So because of that, and since then, there's a whole bunch of Jews in the city of Shushan. And so there's a man named Mordecai. Everyone say Mordecai. Beautiful, you're with me. And he's from the tribe of Benjamin. Okay? Everyone good? Beautiful. And he had a younger cousin named Esther. Everyone say Esther. Beautiful. Now, Esther's parents passed away. Man, this really sounds like a Disney movie. Esther's parents passed away. And Mordecai is significantly older, even though he's her cousin. And he brings her in and looks after her himself. So when this king says, bring all the young virgin girls in, Mordecai says, okay, well, maybe this is her chance. This is her chance to make something of herself. So he says, I'm going to take Esther. And he takes Esther into the palace. And each girl goes through this pampering process. It goes for 12 months. This isn't a day spa. This is a year spa. This goes for ages. 6 months of essential oils. I'm not joking. Straight up essential oils, 6 months. And 6 months of perfume and beautifying women. I don't know what that means. It sounds painful. I'm just being honest. Because when it comes to girls, beauty is pain. Am I right, ladies? Right? Matilda knows what's up. She knows what's going on. So, Mordecai told Esther, all right, you're going to go, but don't tell anyone that you're a Jew. Keep it a secret. Don't tell anyone who your people are. Just, your name is Esther, and that's it. Actually, I'm pretty sure she had a different name. But she went with Esther. So don't tell anyone that you're a Jew. And every day, this legend of a cousin stands at the king's gate. And he just paces back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, waiting to see what would happen. Every single day. He doesn't sit down. He's stressed out. He wants to make sure that she's okay. So inside Esther met this eunuch, right? And he kind of had a liking towards Esther. Like she found favor in his eyes, and he looked after her, and he would give her advice, and he kind of gave her a little bit extra care, extra, I don't know, essential oils and perfume and wax strips. I really don't know what they did. I promise you, I don't know. It doesn't say. I think the words in the Bible say beautifying women, I think. Anyway, stay with me. So she took his advice. All the other girls are doing their own thing. They all want the same goal. But Esther took the advice of the eunuch who knew the king. And so after 12 months, each girl would go in before the king, and she would take something with her. She can come up with whatever she likes. Like, I think I should take... It's like the first beauty pageant of all time. It's like, I'm going to take juggling balls and watch these tricks. Right? So Esther didn't take anything except what the eunuch told her to take, because he knows the king. She only took his advice. And so after 12 months, a girl would go in the evening, and she would leave in the morning, and she would never go back unless the king liked her, and she would be the one crowned as queen. So Esther, it was her time. She went in, and the king saw her. And the king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. It's a big deal for Esther. She's now a queen. What did she do? What was her rights? Did she work for it? I don't know what that 6 months of beautifying was like, but it paid off. Now Mordecai used to sit within the king's gate every day. And one day he overheard two other eunuchs talking, two other guys that worked with the king. And they were chatting and kind of devising a plot to kill the king. They weren't happy with this whole dethroning Vashti situation and bringing this Esther girl in, and they weren't happy. So they said, I think we should do this, and this is the plan. And Mordecai was like, oh my goodness, I've got to do something about this. And he went and he told Queen Esther. And Esther went and told the king in the name of Mordecai that these two people are going to kill you, and this is the plan. It's all going down this way. And the king was angry, and he killed those two guys. Okay? Now we have a happy queen, a happy king, and Mordecai just saved the king's life. Everything seems well in the world. About 4 years go by, and we're introduced to a villain, just like most stories. Chapter 3 in the book of Esther, in comes Haman. Haman is our villain. Everyone say, ooh. Well, I like it. It's nice. He's an all-round bad guy. He's a horrible person. Think of Hitler. Think of Haman. That sounds worse than it is until you hear what's about to happen, and then you're like, Hitler. Yeah, it makes sense. Let's keep going. We meet Haman in chapter 3, and he just receives a promotion. We see this guy, and he becomes above all the other princes in the land. And he loves himself. He's full of himself. The king actually gives orders that everyone should bow and give homage to this Haman guy. They should all just, every time they see him, bow down on the ground. Except Mordecai. He never bows. Never Mordecai. Never. He would not bow. Some of the king's servants see Mordecai at the king's gate and they're like, dude, why are you not bowing? His only answer, I'm a Jew. I don't bow. I'm a Jew. Yeah, he's the only one that doesn't bow. There are Jews scattered all over these provinces. Mordecai is the only one that doesn't bow. Why don't you bow? I'm a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai wouldn't bow, he was full of anger and rage. He wanted to knock him out right there and then. But he doesn't. Why? He's like, I don't want to just get one guy. I want to kill all the Jews. Hitler. A little while later, Haman approaches the king and he tells him this. There are a certain group of people in your provinces, scattered all over the place. And their laws are different to our laws. And they don't abide by your laws. It's not right that you should just let them do this. They shouldn't get away with it. We should not let them continue like this. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of the people that take out the work to destroy and annihilate. The word annihilate is written. Hitler. Annihilate all the Jews. I will pay for it. That's how evil this Haman guy is. So the king gave Haman his signet ring, which can sign any decree, deal, any piece of paper, as if the king wrote it himself. And he says, do whatever you think is good. Go ahead. So Haman brought all the scribes together. Remember, the provinces go from India to Ethiopia. All over the region. So many different languages. They bring scribes. They write all the papers down. They translate it to all the different languages. And they get couriers to send it out. I'm talking, this isn't Australia Post. This is like, there's people traveling by horse, delivering letters that say, this is the first month of the year. The letters say that on the 12th month of the year, every Jew will be executed. Every single one of them will die. From India to Ethiopia, all the provinces in every single language so that every man can read it. Every Jew will die. The decree came out in the main city of Shushan, and all the Jews were distressed. Obviously, it's stressful. They literally were given a death sentence. Haman and the king sit down to have a drink. Look at the difference, the contrast between the two situations right now. We have a whole people scattered all over the 127 provinces, hearing this news, crying and freaking out, while Haman and the king just kick back and have a drink. Mordecai hears the news of the king's decree. He rips his clothes. He puts on sackcloth and ashes, which is the custom of the time for Jews when they hear something bad or they're in mourning. And he goes out into the streets. He doesn't go home and cry. He goes out into the streets and he cries out loud. And he wails and cries, bitter cries. I mean, like ugly cry. Snot coming down. And he goes as far as the king's gate, but he doesn't go in because no one is allowed to go inside the king's palace or the courtyard wearing sackcloth. So there's great mourning among all the Jews everywhere in all the provinces. And they're fasting and weeping and wailing. Many of them laying in the street wearing sackcloth and ashes. And when Esther hears that Mordecai is in the street wearing sackcloth and ashes, she doesn't get it. She doesn't know why. So she sends someone to send him some clothes. It's like, put on some clothes. He refuses and he sends it back. She doesn't get it. She gets one of the eunuchs to go. She's like, find out what's happening. What is going on? And Mordecai told him the whole situation, all about the king's decree, and he even gave him a copy of the decree, and he told the eunuch, tell Esther, go into the king and plead on our behalf. Plead on the behalf of the people. So Esther sent back a word to Mordecai. She says this, all the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court of the king, who has not been called, has but one law, to be put to death, except for the one that the king holds out his golden scepter. And yet I myself haven't been called to the king for like 30 days. It's been 30 days since the king saw his wife. It's been a month since the king even called the queen into his courtyard or his palace or his house. Maybe he started to lose interest in his wife. Maybe he wasn't that keen on Esther. Maybe he was busy with other stuff. But Mordecai sends a word back to Esther. And he says this, do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. If you don't do it, someone else will. If you don't save us, God's going to use someone else anyway. He's going to save us somehow. But if you don't, you're going to die and your family's going to die too. But maybe you're in a position right now to do something about it for such a time as this. For maybe you're here for a reason. Maybe you are right where you are for a purpose. And Esther sent back word to Mordecai. She's like, okay, I'll do it. Just gather all the Jewish people together. Everyone. Just gather them all together and fast for me. Don't eat, don't drink for 3 days, day and night. Don't eat anything, don't drink anything. My maids and I will do the same. And then I will go to the king, even though I know it's against the law. And she says, and if I die, I die. Now after 3 days of fasting, on the third day, Queen Esther put on her royal robe and she walks towards the king's palace. She starts heading and walks through and stands in the king's inner court, in the king's palace, opposite from the king's house, and where he's sitting on his throne. She's nervous. She walked in. I can imagine there was probably a moment of silence because no one's expecting her. The king definitely wasn't. We don't know if he's going to accept or reject this stance, this position that she just barges in on him. I imagine this moment of silence must have felt like a lifetime. She goes in, she's nervous, she's stressed, and when the king saw her and their eyes met, he locked eyes with her. She's probably praying underneath her breath. Please, God, don't let me die. Please, God, don't let me die. Please, God, don't let me die. And the king looked into her eyes. And it's like he loved her all over again. She found favor in the eyes of the king. And he held out the golden scepter. So she walked over and she touched the top of the scepter. And he said to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you up to half the kingdom." Far out. That's crazy. This guy's just giving away half his kingdom. "Whatever you desire." And Queen Esther said, "If it pleases the king, I would love to have both the king and Haman to come and have a banquet in my palace." And the king called for Haman quickly. He's like, "Quick, someone get Haman." And they went to the banquet. And they had a feast. And they ate. And they drank. And everything was great. And the king asked Queen Esther again, "What is your petition? It shall be granted to you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom, and it shall be done." And again, Queen Esther says, "If it pleases the king, I would like to have both you and Haman for another banquet again tomorrow night. And I'll make my request then." He says, "Okay, let's do it." Queen Esther clearly knew the phrase that a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So you can imagine, Haman left over the moon. Like he thinks, "Woo! This is the best day ever. Man, I just had lobster and man, it was the best banquet. I wasn't even in the room. They called me. They called for me to go to this banquet. Man, I am important. Woo!" You know, in Arabic they say he was flying with joy. Tayar min farha. Yeah, he was flying overjoyed. Tayar min farha. He was over the moon, so happy. And on his way home, he's like dancing, I don't know, "'cause I'm happy," and he's walking home. And on the way home, he passes the king's gate. Who sits at the king's gate? Mordecai. He sees Mordecai. Who doesn't bow? Mordecai. He sees this guy for 1 second. Everything changes. He's so angry. I hate this guy. He's full of rage once again, but he lets it go. And he goes home. He calls his friends, he calls his wife. He's like, guys, I need to tell you what's been happening. It just started with like a promotion at work. But everyone bows down to me. It's crazy. It's insane. And then you're not going to believe this. The queen asked for me by name and just the king. Like it was just the two of us. Just us two. And we went to have a banquet. The food was amazing. Honey, I love your food too, but like this was so much better. It was so good. And we had an amazing time. And you're not going to believe it. She wants me to go again with the king because we're like this. We're going again tomorrow night. It's insane. You're not going to, I can't believe that this is happening. Everything is coming up, Haman. This is the best. I am the best. I'm the best. However, this one dude, Mordecai, every time I see him, he gets under my skin. I hate this guy. Who does he think he is? I hate Mordecai. I feel like all this goodness means nothing if Mordecai exists. I hate him. I hate Mordecai. And his wife makes a suggestion. He's like, you know what? Build a gallows 50 cubits high. Seems like a good size. And hang him on it tomorrow. And then go to your banquet. Be fine. Just build the gallows tonight. In the morning, go to the king, suggest that we kill him, hang him, and then go have fun at your dinner. She made taking someone's life seem so simple. However, that night, the king couldn't sleep. So he said, man, I can't sleep. Get someone in here to read me some of the chronicles, like the records of, I don't know, the last 5 years. Let's say 5 years? Yeah, that sounds good. Let's just get someone to come in here and read some of the history of my kingdom. Read it to me. Maybe I'll fall asleep. So they start to read the records. And it was read the part where Mordecai saved the king's life because he overheard those two eunuchs trying to kill the king. Remember back at the beginning of the story? And he's like, wait, hold up. Have we done anything about that? This Mordecai, like, has there been any honor or like dignity given to this Mordecai guy? The eunuch said, no, I don't think so. I don't think we've done anything for him. He's like, okay, maybe we should do something. And the sun's coming up and it's getting to morning. He's like, who's in the court now? Who's outside in the court? They have a quick look and, oh, Haman just showed up. Haman's in the court. He's like, cool, bring him in. Okay. And the king asked Haman, hey, Haman, this guy's over the moon. He's got a plan to suggest to kill Mordecai right now. He's got everyone bowing down to him. He's got a banquet with the queen later. He had one last night. He's in a very good place. And the king asks him, while he's in that mindset, what shall be done for the man who the king delights to honor? And of course, Haman thinks, after having such an amazing day yesterday, who could the king delight to honor more than me? Literally no one. Like there was only me and him at the dinner last night. And we're going again tonight. So Haman starts getting carried away. This is his suggestion. Let a royal robe be brought which the king was worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden, which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let this robe and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that he may array him or parade him around who the king delights to honor. Then parade him on horseback through the city square and proclaim to everyone and shout out, thus shall it be done to the man who the king delights to honor. The king's like, wow, that's a great idea. Hurry, go get a robe and go get a horse as you have suggested, and do so for Mordecai, the Jew who sits within the king's gate, and leave nothing undone that you have said. Do everything that you just said. Gobsmacked, I'm sure. Mordecai must be over the moon. Haman is shocked, lost for words, and he has no choice but to get the robe, get the horse, and parade Mordecai on a horse around the city and declare and proclaim, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. Haman, fully ashamed, covers his head and goes straight home. He told his wife and his friends everything that happened. It's like, man, you're not going to believe this. This is what happened. And I didn't get to tell him about the gallows. He just hit me straight away with this whole Mordecai stuff. And his wife tells him this. Listen, if this Mordecai guy, before whom you have started to fall, is of Jewish descent, you have no chance. You will fail. Let that sink in. If he's a Jew, you've got no hope. If you've already started down this path, you have no hope. Later that night, Haman and the king head over to the queen's palace, and they're having banquet 2.0. Again, at the banquet, they eat and they drink. And the king asks again, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It shall be granted to you. What is your request up to half the kingdom? And it shall be done. And the queen brought her petition to the king. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, if it pleases the king, let my life be given to me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. And the king replied, who is he? And where is he? Who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing? And Queen Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked man, Haman. The king gets up in his anger and his fury, and he walks out into the courtyard. He needs time to think about what's going on. What just happened? Well, Haman began pleading for his life before Queen Esther. He starts begging for his life. Please, please, please. His begging gets to crawling, and he kind of lying down on the couch that she's sitting on, and he's, please, please. The king comes back in. He sees Haman half on the couch that the queen's on, and he yells in anger, will he assault the queen while I'm in the house? And they covered his face. I don't want to look at it. Cover his face. And they told the king about the gallows that he made for Mordecai. And the king said, hang him on it. So they hung Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. And the king's wrath subsided. And the king gave his signet ring to Mordecai. And they reversed the decree to kill all the Jews. None of the Jews in all 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia was to die. Actually, the opposite happened. They said any enemy of the Jews, anyone who hates the Jews, was to be killed. The Jews began to have a feast, which is called the Feast of Purim, and it became a tradition, and it's a feast on the 13th and the 14th day of the 12th month every year. And Mordecai, the Jew, became famous in all the provinces from India to Ethiopia, and he became the second in charge to the king. This is an amazing story. Queen Esther, the whole book of Esther. There's drama, there's revenge, there's plot twists, there's romance, there's blood, there's a beauty pageant. It has everything. I'm not going to talk much from me. This is mostly just the Bible tonight. But I think it's best when the Word of God speaks for itself. There's a time for preaching, there's a time for teaching, There's a time for games. Sometimes there's a time just to, hey, I want to tell you a story from the Bible. Very simple. The Bible is full of stories of people that, and empires and kings that tried to destroy the Jewish people. So many times. The chosen people of God. Even in more recent times, Hitler, Nazis. You know what? Israel itself is surrounded by countries that at one point or another have said, we will destroy you at some time. Yet, throughout all the Bible and throughout all history, the chosen people of God still survive. If you want to know if God is real, look at the people of Israel. Look no further than the chosen people of God. How is it that so many people want to destroy this nation, this people, and yet they still survive? Their existence alone tells you of the reality of God. Just like Mordecai said, if you don't do it, God will save us somehow. Whether you like it or not, we're going to survive. We've been promised. There's a blessing from Abraham. Like, it's a covenant. It's solid. It's secure. There's nothing you can do to change it. If you don't do it, we will still survive, but you will perish. If you're not in with this covenant, if you're outside the covenant, if you reject God, you're on your own. But if you're still part of this people, this covenant, He's going to save us one way or another. One thing that this story tells me, it's the only point I'm going to make, is God's perfect divine timing. Esther was in the right place at the right time. She was used for God for such a time as this. She was in the right place at the right time. What are the chances that He picked Esther out of all the virgins in all the land, that after 12 months of beautifying, that He picked her? What are the chances? I don't know how many there were. I don't know what that number looks like. And you know what? What are the chances? What are the chances that the night that Haman is going, he builds the gallows to kill Mordecai? Like, he's ready. Tomorrow morning I'm going to go and tell the king, and we're just going to hang him and move on. I've got the ring. Let's kill him. What are the chances that on that specific night, the king couldn't fall asleep? And on that specific night, when he couldn't fall asleep, he said, you know what? Get someone to read. I want to hear something. And what are the chances that on that specific night, when he couldn't sleep and he wanted to hear something read, that they read the exact portion of the history books that talked about Mordecai, which reminded him of what he did to save the king's life? What are the chances? It's all about God's timing. His divine timing. His perfect timing. They could have read an old section. They could have read something newer, more recent. God's timing is always perfect. Whether you can see it yet or not. There was a long time between when the decree was put in place and when it was supposed to be taken out and when they changed it. You might have done something good in secret and thought, well, you know what? No one's really seen that. God saw it. Mordecai saved the king's life. He didn't expect anything. He didn't expect a reward. He didn't expect a parade. He didn't want a gold medal. He just did what he thought was right. He didn't expect anything for it. Haman, on the other hand, he wanted all the glory, did nothing. He just existed. Live like Mordecai. Do the right thing in the secret place when no one's looking. God will reward you. Whether you see it or not, it doesn't matter. Whether it's here, whether it's heaven, it doesn't matter. Do the right thing because it's the right thing. You don't need to always be like Haman, always trying to get the approval of everybody, trying to get the glory, trying to look good in front of everybody. Live like Mordecai. Stand up for what you believe in. And be bold like Esther. Take risks like Esther. Give commands like Esther. She risked everything to save her people. Let's pray. God, we thank you so much for your word. We thank you for the stories that are in your word, for the truth that is in your word, for the power that is in your word, God. We thank you that your word can transform us. Your word can renew our mind. God, I pray that there is a hunger for your word. That it will become greater than any other form of entertainment. Better than any streaming service. God, I pray that tonight has opened the eyes of some people to see the beauty in your word. That your word is enough. We don't need anything else. God, I pray that we will be a generation and a people that will stand up for what's right. That we stand up for what we believe. Even if it looks bad to the world. Even if there might be a law against it. That we will risk everything for you. God, teach us from your word. Let us have solid relationships with you. And we do all this for your glory. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Amen, guys. So tonight was just a story. That's a good story. We're actually going to wrap tonight, just like this. We don't need to do anything else. But go read the book of Esther. It's only 10 chapters, and the last chapter is like this big. Hopefully you'll see, oh yeah, Chris said that. I tried to bring as much of the actual Bible into conversation. Read the book. Come back and tell me, but what about this? Yeah, I'm glad to be corrected. But more importantly, I want you to read your Bible. Cool? Have a great night. We'll see you on Sunday.